Okay, welcome back. Um, we're getting close to putting groundwork with our tank. The groundwork's all but done, and but I just want to suggest reflecting on different places you can get some reference material. These two books, of course, are going to help you along the whole time. And so, what we're looking for is groundwork, stone walls, curbs, and how they look where these panthers traveled. So there's no sense in looking in, Panzer III books running through Tunisia because it's not going to help us with our little project. So um, anyway, let's carry on with our project. I've painted it, got the sidewalks in and the brick walls up. So I'm going to show that to you now and some of the techniques I used, and some tracks in the sand and all that sort of stuff. So let's go get our diorama. So we've moved ahead with our little base. Since seeing you last, I've switched out the wall for the larger wall from Barbakan and put the sidewalk in. Our road is completely painted, and now we've started with a little bit of vegetation. So here's I know that throughout the whole video we've been working on 813 Panther, and I'm just altering at the moment the axles in that kit to go up on this curb. So that's why it's not sitting here. But as far as placement and size and everything, obviously 132 Panther is gonna help us out here. So positioning and all that sort of stuff. Now this base is actually large for just a Panther sitting on it. This base size would probably require figurines, crew members, maybe some combat guys. Alpine obviously is a great company for that, but there's Stalingrad figures and all kinds of figures on the market to help us with those kinds of things. Now, our episodes and our project here is not to talk about painting of figures and all that sort of stuff, so I'm not going to get into that in future episodes in regards to our Panther. This is strictly a base and a tank. So I'm going to remove the Panther now, and we'll talk about the little things that we've done to the base. Alrighty. Okay, so as you can see, I'm close to the end on the base. I still have to put the plastic framing around it. I use 20 thou or 30 thou plastic, and I frame the groundwork and the contours, which I haven't quite finished yet. And I used just regular plaster from Home Depot along here, and I will do the same on the other side of our wall here. See, there's our pink insulation. Everything's just been glued down to the pink insulation, so I have to do that. But as you can see, we're getting very close to the end of our little base, and as you can see, the wall, the sidewalk set, and the brick roads. Now, obviously, one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have some Panther track. You're going to have to simulate that. And the best way to do that is never throw these away if you're into the full track tank tracks for your tank. Please keep these hanging around, because these are going to be the how you're going to make the impression in the sand. So even though you've switched to either plastic track or aftermarket tracks, don't disregard these, because what you're going to do is use these type of tracks to dip into the plaster when it's wet. So all you'd have to do is just moisten this in the water, and the plaster's still going to be wet, and then you're going to press it down just like so. And now it's important to dip this in water though, because if not, you're going to pull the plaster up when you pull the track up. So as you can see, our little tiger tank here, it's a 50-ton tank, you're going to have to show a little bit of track in behind. Now, if you've gone to full tracks, which I have on this tank, and you've disregarded your track, don't hesitate to pick up Panther tracks to use with a Tiger model. I mean, that's quite okay. No one will recognize the paw print in the sand. It's going to work fine if you use Panther with Tiger. That's all right. Just don't go down a narrow little track like a Panzer III. That's not going to convince anybody that that's a good idea. So anyway, always keep a spare set of what they call rubber band tracks hanging around for this type of application. So once you got your, and there's lots of vegetation that I'm going to put along here as well. Some of the tank tracks are going to get covered up. Of course, they're going to run over the grass and run over the leaves. But one of the things that I'm going to do along here is I'm going to put a tree, and you can see how I like the trees in my vignettes. It adds a little height. It's good for showing, especially if I'm going to have figures with it. Guys looking through binoculars in amongst the trees and sort of things like that. So it's one of those things that I like to do, a characteristic I like on my models. And where do you find the trees? Well, it's pretty easy, especially with, I mean, I know it's February now, but pretty soon people will be digging up their gardens come April and May, and they're always throwing out old bushes and stuff. And all these are is roots. And if you get a couple of branches of roots similar to what I have here, there's enough to last you for 10 dioramas. So be on the lookout curbside for people who have just done some serious gardening and they're throwing away all their roots. Roots make the best trees. And model railroaders, I think, are the first ones to start it. And then Shep Payne, of course, in his great diorama books, chatted about it briefly. And then, of course, there's that brand new FAQ dioramas book that's just come out from AK, a fantastic source for finding all this kind of thing in your garden itself, or like I say, curbside from someone who's just changing their landscaping at their home. So now I've picked out a tree just by trimming off a branch. Nice 35th scale, small little, 6-foot tree or 7-foot tree. And you paint these, I always paint them Panzer gray first, or Tamiya dark gray. That's my starting point. And then I've already planted the grass, which is a woodland scenic grass. And you just put that down on your model with white glue. And then don't worry about the color of it, because you're going to airbrush a nice green color to it, depending on what time of the month is your diorama setting. So I've done some, dark colored grass, because this is going to be the fall of the year. This is probably late 44 or early 45. So, it's not going to be rich green. It's not in the summertime. So, and then I'm just going to plant the grass. I'm just going to take my pin vise, drill a hole in, a little white glue on it, and just pin that in like so. I just haven't done it yet because I haven't come up with the exact figures I'm going to use, and sometimes trees and things like this are dictated by which figures you have in your diorama. The positioning and if they're combat figures, it really doesn't matter, but if they're typical alpine figures where they're looking and pointing and doing all that sort of stuff, believe it or not, I take all that into consideration when choosing the vegetation. So anyway, don't overdo it with the roots on your diorama unless it requires it. They can be distracting as well as enhancing. So you don't want to bury this whole wall with vegetation. So just keep all that stuff in mind too. Now there's little teeny things like this little weed here. Easy to do, just drill a hole and take the same grass. And unfortunately, you're going to have to sit there and almost plant each blade of grass. But it's no big deal. It's 15 minutes out of the day, so it's easy to do. And so be strategic. See where your diorama is. So when I drop the Panther on, when I drop 132 back on again, suddenly the tree in this position, you know, it looks like that's the place it should be. Keep in mind, though, that there's been breaking a wall and busting a wall, and quite possibly the tree wouldn't be there. It would have gone up in smoke like the rest of the wall. So keep those things in mind too. So, but let's say we were going to put figures on this little vignette. The heart and the strength of this diorama is in this little triangle right here, based on the position of the tank, position of the barrel, which obviously is flexible. But the center point, if this was a vignette, the action is in this triangle. And then you can even further zero in on it by putting something like a tree in it like that. If you put the tree on the other side at the moment, it's not nearly as effective a diorama. So, like I say, a lot of focus right here, which is going to leave this area here vacant, and you can't do that either. So you can build it up with sandbags and a barrier, as if the tank was going to go forward down the street and has been temporarily stopped. You can do different things in this area here, but the focus of this vignette, providing I was going to put figures in it, would be definitely in this area right here. And you can switch it up. I mean, you can take your tank, move it around, move the barrel here, across like so. And now it's not nearly as effective as it was seconds ago. Suddenly it's a loosey-goosey type of thing. So not nearly as effective. So you want that little triangle. And all you have to do is study Shep's book on placement of figures. I think one of the best is Bill Horan, the way he places his figures, and he wouldn't ever do a diorama this size. I mean, other than Gandermack, which was probably had 16 or 17 figures on it and a little base like this. So don't just start gluing your crew on a thing without study, And what I mean by study is study Bill Horan and study Shep Payne's things, and the other, Mike Blank. Study the great figure modelers before you get into this, because composition at this point would be very important. But like I say, our project is not figures and it's not a diorama. Our figure is just building a simple little base for my Panther. So similar to this, my little Tiger 21 here, having a little stream, and certainly having the door off a T-34, off the hatch door, it's going to tell you that we're somewhere in the eastern front, probably shortly after Kursk, maybe September or so, based on the fatigue of the tank up here. It's certainly not right at Kursk, but shortly thereafter. And so little things like putting the hatch inside the water, Russian hatch, certainly tells you that it's not Normandy. So you can position your theater of war just based on little hints like that. A certain helmet, if you're have a diorama without the hatch and sort of thing, but if you put a Russian helmet in the vignette, certainly that's going to tell you what theater of war we're at. So little tricks like that are very, very handy to tell the viewer where and what we're doing. So anyway, I just want to point out too that the little gully down the center of the road here, typical European type of street, and all I did was painted appropriate colors, a little bit of dark down the center, just down the center, and then putting in a little bit of Tamiya semi-gloss or gloss is always going to show a little dampness on the road. So little things like that, little hints like that, And once again, they just add a little bit of texture to your model. So don't hesitate to do those kinds of things. And that's pretty much it until I'm just gonna, like I say, I'm gonna close this in with some 30 thou plastic or 15 thou. Fill in a little bit of plaster on here and then put some vegetation on this side. And then pretty much we have our base for our tank. So next time I see you, tank number 813 will be back, finished, and I'll probably move the suspension a little bit just to go up and over this curb. We don't want any air between the road and the tank. A tank weighing 40 tons. That's just not going to happen. So I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.